Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, hello. Welcome to Casual Friday Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Air Network. By the way, that might be the last time you hear those words for a while. Casual Friday, but today is Casual Friday, which means I am joined by my good buddy, Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Well, I say this might be the last Casual Friday for a while because Aaron is going to start doing some Wednesday shows with me, see how that goes. Not next week, though, because your boy's going on vacation. And by your boy, I mean not me, Aaron. What's up, buddy, man?
What's up, dude?
I know
I'm already in vacation mode, so I kind of told Greg we recorded our show last night, and I was fully prepped for the show. I was like, I kind of already got one foot out the door, bud. Like, I'm ready to go.
Bailing it in?
Yeah, dude. I want to get out of here, man. I love Buffalo, but I need a break. I need to get some sunshine, hopefully.
So Aaron's going to be on vacation next week, not just from this show, from his show that he does with Greg as well. Just life, man. Just a little family getaway. This is next week's going to be a big week here, by the way, for people listening right now and watching for Talking Buffalo. I don't think I've told you this, Aaron, and we talk literally every day, but 5 year anniversary. Talking Buffalo next week, man. Next week we'll have been around for 5 years. Got a couple really good shows too. Because you were on. I don't want to say right from the get-go, but relatively.
I was trying to just think when you said that, like, how many years since like I started coming on. I bet I am up there with Yurden as
absolutely
most frequent episodes here. I got to be now.
Not even close. You were right up there before we started doing even this weekly stuff. Not all that long ago. Anyway, next week here on the podcast, I'm gonna have a podcaster's role. So I got Joe Yurden on Tuesday, like I do every week, and on Wednesday next week, I'm gonna have a third annual Podcasters Roundtable. This is something that I've done now for 3 years, obviously in a row. Joe Marino, your partner, Greg Thompson over at Cover One, and Bruce Nolan from Buffalo Rumblings. And we get together and we talk about everything except Buffalo Bills and football. Pretty much it's a podcast about podcasting. I get a lot of insight on their process, their style, some of the things that they try to do, that they try to avoid. I just think it's a very useful show. Those are three of the best podcasters.
Greg is going to come on and lie to you. We don't do much. We don't. We just get on and start talking.
Fair point. And then, by the way, and also next Thursday night, live from Imperial Pizza, I start my series. I'll be there live every Thursday night. Tyler Dunn is going to be with me next Thursday. I'm excited about that. That's going to be fun.
I'm going to put you on blast, though. You got to get me. So all these years, all these episodes, and all I see is you posting pictures of wings with other people. Come on, get me in on this deal. I want some Imperial wings and pizza. I'm going to get down there one of these days with you.
This is on tape now because I'm an open invite. Anytime you want to come for a Thursday episode, come. Whether it's just
crash it like you're
whether I already have a guest and you come join along, or whether it's just you and I sitting down, bro. Anytime, man.
I'll just crash it like a late night TV co-host. I'll do it.
So I'm looking forward to it, man. That's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. I miss having a variety kind of show where I have a different guest every week. Sometimes it'll be sports, sometimes it'll be news media. A couple business leaders I'll have on. So that'll be fun. And plus, for the first time ever, I mean, you guys literally every time you do a show, you guys do this over at Cover One, but I have never, ever, ever, ever once in 5 years live streamed the show ever. And we're going to be live streaming these shows on Thursday. So
different beast.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. It is. But I don't edit. So
I was going to say the show, I don't know your other experiences with shows, but how we've always done it, it could be live, right?
Yeah,
like you just take this and go.
This may as well be live. That's why I always say tape live. Like you and I right now, I'm not editing. It's too much of a pain in the ass, especially on the video side to do that. So anyway, the show will be live streamed. So if you want to get out to Imperial, come have a couple drinks or whatever, that's cool. If not, you can watch it live. Thursdays at 7:30. And by the way, before we get going, your partner, Greg Thompson over at Cover One, is debuting a new show. I wanted to make sure I plug this. In fact, this is just starting tonight. I mean, we're dropping this on Friday. So
Yes.
People are going to be hearing this
Friday night.
tonight. Is it? It's not tonight. Or
It'll
is it a week from Friday?
It'll be this Friday. So tonight, people for listening now, it'll be tonight. The Greg Thompson show, super cool.
Tell people a little bit about it.
Yeah, we've talked about, I was just talking to you offline about, we always have different show ideas and stuff. And this is one that he was kind of toying with. And I said, but just do it, right? Like that's the thing with making content to anyone out there. I know I'm not going to be on that roundtable, but any advice that I have is to just start making content, right? Like the worst thing that's going to happen is no one's going to listen. And that sucks, but who cares really at the end of the day? I've tried different podcasts and stuff. Not all of them hit, but I'm excited for him. He wanted to do it. And I really pushed him to go do it and helped him get the logo started. And we have a good network, so he's ready to rip and roll. And he put together a really cool team. Some of the Slack followers from Cover One, some people that people will recognize on Twitter, some funny people. And I saw a little bit of sneak preview what you're going to get. I think, Pat, you'll like it. It's outside of the box in terms of he's going to talk about all sports. He's going to talk about pop culture stuff, giving some rankings, power rankings and stuff like that. I know you're a big power rankings guy, and I'm sure your listeners, if they're still following you after 5 years of you talking about that stuff, they're probably going to like those conversations coming from Greg. So I think it's just adding to the Buffalo sports community and hopefully beyond. I do think I love when new shows and new concepts come out, because it's nothing against anyone, but and my show is one of the most basic Bills talk ones, but we were doing it so early on. I think when people are adding a new element to how they're spinning the podcast, that's when I get really interested and want to take a look, because there's a lot of content, there's a lot of good content, but there's not always new versions of what they're doing. Kind of, I know you're a big fan of If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo, one of our new podcasts.
Very much.
Most of our podcasts aren't evergreen. You probably have the most evergreen content out in the Buffalo sports community, but I think they're going to be right there with the stories they tell and the history of Buffalo and stuff like that. And no one was really doing that. So we're always looking for, hey, how can we tap into the market where people aren't yet?
One of the things I love about If the Walls Could Talk, well, I like the stories. You know what I mean? I'm kind of a sentimental guy. I like the nostalgia. I like going back and hearing some of the stories. I like hearing about the inner workings of contracts and drafts and stuff like that. But to your point, if I missed their show live, I can go back. I can go right now on Cover One on the YouTube page and look up stuff from 2 months ago, and it still has value to me now because it's not the dated, time sensitive material. Correct. Anyway,
our shows are only good for like a week.
Well, it's current Bills content. Yeah, but you guys do it as well as anybody out there. But anyway, so I know Greg's excited. I talked to him briefly about it.
He's very excited.
I think he'll do well. You know,
I do
he's a very personable guy.
I mean, he carries our show, so he can do it by himself.
I don't know. Carrie might be a bit of a stretch, more of a partnership. Stop being so down on yourself.
Yeah, we love each other.
But anyway, I bring that pod table up with those guys, and that's always been my thing. And going back 3 years, why I chose to have those three to really talk about Buffalo and podcasts, because I think they all bring different elements. And in Greg's case, I just think I really do. I think he's a very likable guy, man. I think he's a very personable dude. He's worked hard. He's built up himself a nice following. I think the show's going to do well. I'm excited to watch it. And I told him this. The good thing about doing a show on Friday and Friday can be a tough sell, but I told him, I said, listen, I might listen live on Friday nights, depending on what I'm doing, or if not, I'm going to get up in the morning and have my cup of coffee and, check it out on Saturday morning. So yeah, anyway, I'm excited about that. Quickly, a stalwart in the Buffalo sports media business after 3 decades or so is hanging it up and talking about Howard Simon. Good guy, man. I'll tell you, he's been in the Buffalo market. I think he came back here for good in 1989. He's been on the air with Jeremy now for the last 18 years, the morning show at WGR. I'll tell you, man, he's been on this show. In fact, he was one of my very first guests. I think he was on episode 12, and this is 539 or something like that. But anyway, just a great guy, man. Very knowledgeable with sports, but very personal. Like I'm talking, I use that word with Greg. I use it with Howard as well, too. A very personable guy, man. Very likable person, which quite honestly, in this market, and I'm sure other markets across the nation, with not always mainstream, not always the most likable people.
For sure.
Off the air, or when the camera's not rolling. But Howard is a really good dude, man. So anyway, he announced his retirement, not from working, he said, but at least from sports media this week. So he's going to be gone in a couple of weeks. But I'm sure you're a pretty big fan of Howard.
I'm a huge fan of Howard, man, and I am maybe one of the more aggressive, abrasive Bills content creators in terms of like going at bigger media dudes. I've gotten into
Yeah,
those guys
absolutely.
before. I've got
Mhm.
issues with WGR. They let us on. I have friendships there now with some of the guys, but some of them I have issues with. Howard's never been one. Like in all the years that I followed the Bills and made content, I've never had issues with Howard. The thing I respect most about him is one, he's legacy media, right? Like he went through a period of time in the
Mhm.
80s and 90s where media was just the radio. This was a big deal. Getting Howard Simon in your radio station for WGR was a big get. Like, I think those days are gone of like, hey, we're going to go to another market or within a regional market and go grab a big personality and bring them to our station to headline the radio station. I don't know that younger audiences realize like that's how the game operated back then. He was one of the biggest ones. And he always maintained that sort of legacy personality, radio legacy personality. And that the thing that I think was most endearing for me about Howard was as much as things changed and you had guys like Joe B and Matthew Collar and even Jeremy White come along through the station and games evolved and things changed. And Howard changed along with it, but he never pretended to be anybody other than who
Right.
he is and who he was. And he never got out of his lane of the sports talk he knew and would talk about. And he would be the first to tell you when something was way over his head or he didn't understand it. And I'm not even in the real media game, but in this game, so many people fake it. And you can see it. And there's a lot of people out there, and if they're out there, they probably know who they are. And being true to yourself and staying in your lane is really difficult, and egos get in the way. And I'm sure there were times where his ego was challenged by Jeremy up and coming and some of these other guys that are up and coming, but he just kind of stayed true to who he was. And I have the utmost respect for that and what he's done. And I wrote him a really nice note when I heard about the retirement, because I try to do that myself and stay in my lane and stay to what I know. And it's because of guys like that. I look at I honestly am probably going to become a Howard Simon as I age, like just a whiny bit of a guy. Everything's crickety. I'm just wearing my old man shoes.
He never takes himself too serious, and that's one of the things I've always admired about Howard. He's self-deprecating. He'll make fun of himself more than you ever could. You know what I mean? He's just a really good guy and very accommodating. In this day and age, there's not a lot of people on the air, like I said, mainstream they're not always accommodating to people.
There's
that
a
they
lot of elitist.
Threats.
Everybody's like, I'm right. My opinions are it. And he just you never got that vibe.
Right. Absolutely not. Guys like you and Greg and Joe Marino, thanks to people like Howard and Parton and Nate Gary, of course, getting you guys on the air on the radio and, really bringing some attention to what you guys do as well. So anyway, Howard Simon, a great career and a great person here in the Buffalo sports media. On a serious note, and we're going to talk Bills. And by the way, today's main topic, and there might be some spinoffs from this topic, but I want to talk about the Bills' weaponry. Is it enough right now? And is the problem more that there's not enough talent, or is the problem that it just wasn't deployed at times last year? Again, let's not lose sight of the fact this was a 13-3 team with a very good offense for the most part last year. I don't want to, throw that in the garbage. Anyway, before that, big story yesterday in Buffalo. Convicted mass murderer, that piece of shit, that Peyton Gendron, was sentenced, and it was a very emotionally charged. It was shown live, it was streamed, and saw a lot of emotion from family members, and that was really tough to watch. The raw emotion from some of these families, and I know a lot of people were tweeting and saying things like, man, I wish these guards could just turn their back for a minute and, give some of these people a couple minutes with this young man who did this. Anyway, it's just I'm pretty sure, I think obviously I followed you on Twitter. I think you might have had a comment or two about it. It was really tough to watch. For me, it brought back some painful shit as well. I'll get to that in a second, but for you, it was pretty tough to watch, wasn't it, man?
Yeah, no, I don't even know that I fully processed that whole event throughout this summer. I just I've seen shootings in other places and sort of the distance. I hate to sound whatever. The distance sort of keeps you somewhat separated. Like you feel bad and it doesn't impact you for a short amount of time, but happening right here.
Yeah.
Offline we could talk too, as just there was some personal impact there with this story. And I wanted when that father, whatever he was, charged at him, I was one of those people that said, just let him get a couple in, like there's few things that I love more in my life than my family. And I'm not a violent person and all. I think it should be avoided at all costs. I just hate it. I'm totally in. I'm a very big pacifist, but dude, like there's the line is there. And like, I get it. I get that guy's feelings. And I think that we all could have probably benefited from watching it like for a minute, just letting him go. And I hate that because our society shouldn't operate like that. Like the reason America is the best is as corrupt as it is, we do have a justice system that allows people to have some innocence, even though we know what they did. Like there's benefits to this, but gosh, every once in a while, there's a case like this where it's just some complete scumbag that just he does need this. You need to see him just take a beating. And that was my ultimate thought. Man, I hate everything about that guy. And I don't think he will get what he deserves in prison. Life in a prison is probably too good for what he's going to get. And he'll probably be protected in there and be subject to meals and health care. And he probably shouldn't get any of those things.
And there'll be a portion of prisoners who will look at him fondly, disgustingly.
Yeah, there will.
It's sad.
Yeah, you're right.
It brought back. For me, now you weren't living in Buffalo at the time, so you wouldn't really even know about this story. But we go back to 2009. A girl who was 24 years old. Her name was Renee Greco. She was a healthcare worker and worked at troubled youth home. She was family to me. She was murdered. All right, and it was hard. And I was in court every single day for the whole trial. And the guy was found guilty. And at sentencing, the family asked me to be the one to speak on their behalf. Now, this was different when, what we saw this week. There was 10 people murdered and there's a bunch of different families there represented and stuff. So this was one person and, one family represented. But anyway, people in the family either couldn't talk because they wouldn't be able to get through it, or they're not talkers, So anyway, I gab and don't shut the fuck up. So they asked me to speak on their behalf, and I'll never forget. It's probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life was sit there in a courtroom with cameras all over the place because this was a top story in Buffalo. And so the cameras are on, the lights are on, 7-8 feet away from a guy who murdered a young girl who's family to me, and having to write down something and address it. And just remember my hands like shaking, anger and hostility and fear and just wanting to get through it too, pressure to not screw up. And
sure.
I'll never forget it as long as I live. It was one of the worst things I've ever had to do. And one of the hardest, I don't say where, it was definitely one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And it was even worse. Well, it was even worse here too, because, this guy yesterday, which, crocodile tears, whatever, he in his statement, at least, provided some remorse and said he wishes he didn't do it and yada, 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 whatever. But the guy that I'm talking about, his name was Anthony Allen, by the way. This is the guy who murdered Renee. And some people who are listening might even remember this. But even at the sentencing, he was completely defiant. Like he insulted the judge. It was disgusting. Just that feeling that you have inside you when you're around pure, unadulterated evil. That's what it was like. So anyway, as I'm watching people speak yesterday and just feeling some of that emotion, I related to it, and I obviously not in a good way, because it was just very difficult, man. It's something I hope no one really ever has to experience. It's so hard.
I've had loss in my life and trauma of people I really care about, and I'm still not over it from decades ago. I have not lost somebody to murder, and I couldn't imagine the additional pain of knowing there was somebody out there that took that life. I can reconcile the deaths that have happened because there was events, right? Like that's just a really bad break for somebody, but it wasn't somebody took that life. I don't know for people that have to have experience that hearing that story for you, Pat, man, like I feel really bad. I get nervous speaking at like a wedding or a Chamber of Commerce luncheon or something like that. I couldn't imagine the emotion and pressure. I still talk about, my best friend died 3 years ago. I still talk about it with my wife. If we start talking about him, like, dude, I just bawl with emotion. Like that wound is still there. So hats off to you. I couldn't have done what you did, and the rage. I would have just raged on that guy. I get it. I get why people want to do that.
Well, it was just, it was just making me, I was remembering that. At the same token, it made my heart go out even more for the people yesterday and being in that courtroom and what they have to emotionally endure. Anyway, all right, let's talk about something.
Yeah, can we talk about the Bills?
Get all gloomy. This is casual Friday as shit. This is not supposed to be, shed a
I'd rather fight
Friday,
about Gabe
man.
Davis than this. Come on, what are we doing?
What do you your take? The game's over, and there's nothing really to talk about anymore with the game, but there's still, you're a music guy, man. You and I are both big music fans. We like a lot of the same stuff. I mean, by the way, people don't know, Aaron and I constantly are on Twitter, our DMs showing or sending each other Spotify tracks and stuff. Some obscure,
my favorite thing about you, I tell my wife this. I think you and my brother must be like the same age. You had to have been floating around in the same atmosphere. And because I'm a little brother, I trickled down a lot of, I think, your same era stuff, probably before I should have been into it. But also, I think our parents must have had similar influences as well, because I'll tell my wife this. I think my music tastes are really cool. And I think that I'm a connoisseur of stuff like hip hop and R&B, but I also have a real cheesy sweet tooth for like Air Supply and shit like that. And you're one of like the 5 people I know in my life that will rock out some fucking Air Supply or Bryan Adams.
Love Air Supply.
I think more people like it than they know, but you're willing to admit it. And I really appreciate that about you.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm a big Air Supply guy. I was an 80s teenager, and I discovered 80s music and like that on my own, but I was forced in my house because my dad played Motown shit all the time in the 50s and 60s.
Funk, Isleys.
Yeah. And my wife, by the way, is like 8 years younger than me. Same thing with her. I mean, I've never in my life seen somebody who's in their 40s who can know more music than she does. So I'm not even like the most musically inclined person in my own family. It's crazy. And then in the 90s, I mean, that was just my favorite era of music ever, between R&B and, some alternative rock and things like that. But anyway, my point was, we're both music people. And when you think Super Bowl, I think halftime show, and I think national anthem and stuff like that. Babyface did America the Beautiful. Chris Stapleton did the anthem. Let's start with Rihanna, though. Like, what were your thoughts on her halftime show? How would you rate it?
So I want to start by saying I don't think of the halftime show. I actually don't like the Super Bowl halftime show. I don't always find it to be music. I also, then everybody comes out. Last year's really pissed me off. Everybody came out last year and was like, this is the greatest halftime show we've ever seen.
Of course.
And like, there's nothing less inspiring to me than watching like 55-year-old rappers walk around the stage. Like, I love rap music. I'll listen to it all. Yeah, but like, I think we were just caught up in our own nostalgia of being kids and be like, yo, Snoop Dogg. Like, I don't want to hear it. There's been some fantastic ones, but you can't tell me that one last year was better than Prince's or Michael Jackson's halftime performance. Like, I'm not willing to hear it. This one was really good. I was actually taken back surprised. I wasn't interested in it. I wasn't like rushing downstairs to get it. We were kind of putting the kids to bed. Neither of the kids wanted to deal with me. So I came down and watched this by myself. I guess one thing I didn't realize, I don't listen to a lot of radio music, right? I'm a real niche stuff nowadays for new music. So I know who Rihanna is, and like, I know she's talented, but I don't necessarily follow her music. And every song was a hit that I actually knew, just like that is out there in the world. And I know that song. And I was like, oh shit, like she has more of a discography than I thought. Cause when I heard it, I was like, Rihanna, like, how's this going to play for 20 minutes or whatever? And it was good. Like, she legitimately has good music that I liked. The show was whatever. It was fine. It was just another big stage performance. I had no necessarily stuff there, but I was surprised, taken back, how much music of Rihanna's I actually knew and liked.
I realized that I like Rihanna more than Beyonce.
I'm not a big Beyonce fan. Yeah, I'm not.
I guess I'm not either. I like Rihanna more than her. I'm not the biggest Rihanna fan on earth. I like her unique sound. I always thought she sounded different. Yeah, I thought the performances were fine. I was a little surprised, not necessarily complaining. This isn't a necessarily a criticism, but I was a little surprised that there weren't guests.
Yes. My wife asked that when she came down. She
collaborates with so many people. Eminem and Jay-Z was there. I know Jay-Z was there because they showed him during the pregame. So I was a little bit surprised that she didn't.
Although it's got to cost a lot of money for like Pepsi or whatever when you start getting like 10 guests on some of these things, because you're paying all those people and all their expenses and all that stuff.
I mentioned this. I believe it was with Joe Yurden, but anyway, old man little complaint here. I guess I'm getting old, but there was one point which because I thought this was like a classy, eloquent, kind of like futuristic performance for the most part. But she grabbed the crotch at one point. By the way, that was edited out on the YouTuber. I know, I was grabbed the crotch, smelled her finger. I'm like, again, I know me and the old guy complaining about shit, but I'm like, why?
Yeah.
You know, it just didn't kind of fit what she was doing.
The rest of what she's doing.
But I liked her.
Isn't she pregnant?
Yeah, she is pregnant.
That's kind of.
This
I mean,
is
whatever.
her second one coming. Hey,
Yeah.
Look, man.
If you're a mom, you shouldn't be doing that. But whatever.
What about Babyface? I don't know if you caught that. Obviously, you did catch that. I'm a big Babyface guy. It was very, very understated performance, which again,
I
not
have to
really
go back and watch that. I did not catch it.
No?
I honestly, the beginning of the game was a lot of it was watching on my phone. Dude, that period of time is like dinner time. Kids are freaking obnoxious. Like I'm trying to get everybody ready for bed.
True.
So it was a little spotty. Even the anthem I didn't catch till after. I saw it floating around on Twitter. I didn't catch it.
But you did catch it after? What were your thoughts on that?
I don't like either. I don't like the anthem. First of all, I don't like the song. I think Canada's got a way better anthem than we do, and my kids agree. Whenever we go to hockey, they walk around singing "Oh Canada." I don't like.
Call you an American, Aaron.
I don't care. Go ahead. I really don't. I have no nationalism. But I think I walked away from. It was a really good version, and I shit on. He's a country music guy, right? Chris Stapleton kind of is in that, but he's more. That's a blues, right? Like he's a bluesy country guy. I guess I got to go look into his music because I get shit on country music a lot. I know there's talented people in it. I hate the freaking twang of it, but that guy was more bluesy, more in my genre. I could see him singing some songs that I like. I was pretty impressed by the sound. I like that sound. Of course, I was gonna take to it.
He's very, very traditional sounding, old school country guy. But yeah, a lot of rasp, a lot of blues to him. I'm gonna tell you right now, more so than the anthem. I just like going back and evaluating performances. I spent a good chunk of this week going back on YouTube and pretty much going through Super Bowl by Super Bowl and finding the national anthem for all of them. And I'll tell you what, I put this on Twitter.
I saw it.
That was number 2 for me all time. Whitney's number 1, and I don't ever see that changing. But Whitney, I got Whitney, Chris Stapleton 2, Demi Lovato 3. That was back in 2020. And I'll tell you, man, you know, all these powerful females have done the anthem now. Beyonce and
people overpower
Lady Gaga. I thought Demi Lovato was I thought her performance was absolutely beautiful. And then I had Luther Vandross 4 and Beyonce 5. Yeah, man, I was really high on Chris Stapleton. You got to start listening to some country. By the way, I don't like that I'm telling someone else to listen to country. Like I was a big country fan. I'm not a big country fan either. I'm a mainstream guy. I'm starting to learn a lot of the mainstream stuff. Going to country concerts is fun.
Dude,
because of the tailgate.
No, it's not. None of this stuff's fun. I hate it all. I really do. I had a girlfriend in my like early 20s, like 1920 that I lived with, and she was like super into country. Her parents were from Texas. And like there was some good some Hank Williams Jr., there's a few guys that like, okay, I can concede that there's some good songs, but there's just everything about country music and the culture. Just it totally does not hit with me, dude. I'm a hip hop R&B guy into my blood. Like the two things are contrasting to me.
Be right back, folks. All right, I'm back here with Aaron Quinn from Cover One, who does not like the national anthem. He's not a big country music fan.
Oh, Canada.
I like it,
Good
though.
one.
You know what? I respect it, man. A lot of people out there, even if they don't like something, they'll say they do or whatever.
I'm not scared. Come on.
No, you ain't scared. I want to talk about the Buffalo Bills, the offense, the skill players more specifically, and a criticism, not a criticism. Well, it is a criticism, I guess. Probably the biggest offseason narrative that we're going to hear, at least between now and the draft for sure, is that this team needs to add more to the offense. I want to reference a tweet. I'm going to put it up here. It's from our buddy, the guys at the Rock Pile Report, Drew. All right. And there was a statement. It said, since the Bills waived Kelvin Benjamin in 2018, Allen has played with 0 first-round picks on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into skill position guys, this is something that I think you're going to agree with. In fact, considering your top priority this offseason, and you said this on the show with Greg last week, your show was to protect Josh better. The Rock Pile Report, I don't even know if I can read it because it's so small, but basically he's saying that he agrees that the offense needs more assets, but then he started naming a bunch of guys who are drafted early or first round picks that just haven't panned out at all. And he's basically saying is that drafting a guy in the first round, a wide receiver or whatever in the first round, is no guarantee that he's going to work out and make your offense better. And kind of shared the same sentiments, I think. In fact, not I think, I know, because he says offensive line is greater than, wide receiver or tight end. So I guess let's start there. When you have weapons, they're great, but if you don't have a line that can block better, it kind of makes it not as effective. Has your mindset changed whatsoever over the last week or so? Is your top priority still give me an elite guard through the draft or free agency or trade or tackle more than a wide receiver or a tight end?
Yeah, for sure. The graphics like that drive me absolutely insane. Sneaky Joe is a guy that does this a lot, where you find like a really loose stat that is connected to the Bills and is true, but lacks absolutely all context at all, and just put it out there to stir up a conversation.
Yeah,
which I get it. Somebody's got to do it, and those conversations get had. And I take the bait all the time, and I'll retweet them with some like, "This is a totally illogical. This is a logical fallacy. Don't listen to this." This is another one of those examples. Like, look, some of the best receivers of all time were not first round wide receivers.
Right.
Stephon Diggs has been a top 5 wide receiver for the last 5 years in the NFL. He's not a round 1 wide receiver. You do get those guys, but it's going to be in the top half of the first round. I think there's a big difference for fans too. To picking 27 is a different ball game than in picking 12. Like, sure. Totally different. The first round should be 2 separate rounds almost. Yeah. This idea that I'm all for adding weapons, and I'm never going to argue against adding more playmakers to a football team. This idea that it's a top priority need, or that, you're required to put your big first asset into it to make sure you hit on it. I think these are just total logical fallacies. If it falls into your lap at 27, fantastic, and you can walk away with a top wide receiver that'll be a future number 1 or number 2 for you, that's a win. If one of these free agents sort of loses musical chairs, or maybe even OBJ is willing to take less now, the receivers coach that he played with, maybe take a 1-year deal, something happens where a good deal falls into your lap, a trade possibility where you can give an extension, take it. Absolutely take those weapons. But this idea that it's one, that the Bills' weapons are so bad that it needs to be the top priority, I think is a little bit over the top, too knee-jerk of a reaction. And it's just not, it's a conversation right now that seems to be lacking that middle ground. You're either we need to take and prioritize it, or people are like, oh no, everything's fine. I think it's somewhere in the middle. The weapons probably need some tweaks. They need to find ways to get the guys they already have the ball a little bit more, but it's going to change. It's going to be a different room. It's just a variance of how much the Bills actually are going to be able to spend on it with their limited assets. And to Rockpile's report, like, I do think there is a weapon in getting offensive linemen, that people aren't discussing that as a weapon in itself too.
A good GM, and you talked about this, we all talk about this, a good general manager will pay a guy not based on what he's done, but based on what he's going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get a contract. Well, I think kind of like, so when you evaluate a player, I feel like it's only fair that you do the same, and let's throw contracts out the window. But okay, so the Bills don't have enough weapons. If that's a criticism, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. So I guess what I'm asking you is this, and I want to start with the running back, James Cook.
Mm-hmm.
We saw what he's done. I mean, he's only been in the air 1 league.
Yeah.
But you project him now, like I said, just like you would with a free agent. And when you're going to, evaluate how much money he is worth, you look at a guy like James Cook right now, what do you see with him? Because, by the way, for a 3rd straight year, we are headed towards mock draft season where late round first round running back is going to be a very hot topic discussion.
Sure.
It was with Travis Etienne 2 years ago. Last year it was Breece Hall. This year it's going to be Machine Robinson. We could already see that coming.
Yeah. Najee Harris was in that with Etienne a couple years ago. Yeah,
ago. What's your thoughts on James Cook right now going forward? What do you think of him?
Yeah, we addressed this a little bit in the show last night when we were talking about which free agents we're prioritizing bringing back for the Bills. Was our show last night a little bit, and the Devin Singletary conversation has to do with James Cook. And my take there was, I would welcome Devin Singletary back, but whoever comes in, whoever loses that musical chair as a running back or 5th round pick running back, needs to be behind Cook and Hines. Like, I am all in on a backfield that features James Cook and has a lot of Nyheim Hines in this offense. I think they're both weapons that you need to find ways to manufacture touches. Josh Allen's comments on the Kyle Brandt show about, hey, it's the KC's league, and if you want to win, you got to beat them, and you might have to copy some of what it is that they do. Well, if you want to copy it, find ways to get those guys the ball in space. And so I'm all in on James Cook. I was not super high when we drafted him. I know you were. My producer, Chris Kepner, early in the season was really telling me like, hey, man, you're too low on this guy. And I was way too low. He improved over what I saw from him out of college. It wasn't just playing in a great Georgia offense. That explosiveness is real. His patience is better than I anticipated. He's not a CJ Spiller where it's just bounce outside and always trying to bounce outside. Like if he can continue to grow and improve, and again, if we protect Josh Allen, I think a secondary thing of that is the run game should also get better with improved line. I think you'll see like a real explosive season from both those running backs. So I'm all in on the running back room as is. I think it fits the modern NFL and what you need. They might be lacking the sort of short yardage dude, but Josh Allen can do a lot of that. And I do think Reggie Gilliam can get in and do some of that stuff too. But they might not be the most well-rounded room, but it could be very explosive if Dorsey gets those guys the ball.
Going back a year or so ago with James Cook drafted in the second round, and it was like, all right, well, this kid's fast and he gets the ball well out of the backfield. By the way, we're talking about weapons. The deployment of weapons with the Bills left something to be desired, because I still get really annoyed when I look at the box score of that Bengals game. James Cook having 0 targets has got to be one of the most annoying numbers that I recall looking back at that game. But anyway, so if we were playing buy or sell right now as a game, you'd be buying James Cook as the number one running back going in the next year, thinking with a bigger role and more opportunity that he could be a guy that produces big.
I think so. Yeah.
Good.
I'd be fine.
What about, we talked a little bit about him last week. I know you're not as high on him as you are James Cook, but I think he's going to be a guy who's going to have a pretty prominent role on this team. And I'm talking about Khalil Shakir going in the year too. Because again, you gotta, you don't got a ton of cap room. You're not going to be making a ton of moves. Some of the guys who are young guys who had smaller roles last year, I think the Bills need to count on them to step up and have bigger roles as they grow into players. What's your thoughts right now on Khalil Shakir? I know they're not as high as some others. Or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm really in on Khalil Shakir. I think I really was impressed with him at camp. I know he made some mistakes early. It's going to happen. I'm hoping that he improves upon those. I really liked what we saw late in his limited usage late in the year. He made some big catches. He got some nice yards after catch. Like he always seems to be going forward. I've said it a bunch. People kill me all the time. I see a lot of Robert Woods in this kid. I think he's faster and more athletic than he appears. The way he plays is a little slouchy. Like he doesn't look like he would be a athletic guy that can go up and make contested catches and run pretty fast. But Bruce Nolan, I think it was, tweeted out during some of the conversation this year that he had the same 40 time as Isaiah McKenzie. Like he is a fast, gadgety guy, again, that you can get the ball in space. Plus, I think he can do a little bit more inside, outside. So I see the tool. I see that he could be a nice tool in this offense. It's now just taking those steps and really matching the development to meet the expectations. The word out of the Senior Bowl, because he was a Senior Bowl player before the draft, was that the Bills are really excited about his development going forward next year. And I think that is one of these things that going into camp is going to be, in my opinion, maybe one of the things I'm watching the most is who is it that takes that step? Like Gabe Davis is really closer to that really good number 2 wide receiver than I think fans are talking about right now. But I do think Khalil Shakir can push for being a guy that gets more of the targets in this offense. And this could be a big summer for him.
Everyone knows Stephon Diggs is one of the best receivers in the NFL. Gabe Davis, it's a very mixed bag. It depends on who you talk to and where you fall with him. But again, you talk about the Bills' collection of weapons. I think it falls on guys like Cook and Shakir stepping up in their second year, which again, you draft, you develop players, and this is why good teams consistently stay good. And then another guy who, he was really good in 2021, and he was good last year too. But like early in the season, like Dawson Knox, it didn't feel like he was being deployed much in the passing game. But as the season went on, the numbers improved. I think he had a touchdown like 6 straight or something like that. I don't know. He put it this way, without me having the numbers in front of me, I know he was far more productive in the back half of the season. He's another guy though, right? It's like you got to get him the the ball more than they did early in the year. After he signed that contract, I remember, our favorite person in the world, Joe from Queens, their Buffalo Wins, was always bitching and criticizing about Knox because of his numbers. I'm like, well, he looks like a blocking tight end right now. I'm talking about early in the season. But point being, is he a key is he a weapon that you're fine with? Like, do you need to go out and you need to try to upgrade the tight end position, or you just think there's more room for him to continue growing?
I've been way in on Knox since the jump. I was Joe Marino and I were really the defenders of, we don't need to trade for Zach Ertz. Like, Dawson Knox is going to take that step.
I remember
He's
that.
Got all the tools. This is a good player. He's got the blocking down. Like, he's progressed exactly where you would expect a guy that played quarterback his entire life, ran a super limited route tree, got very limited experience playing with, what was it, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. Like, there was 3 wide receivers that all got drafted in the NFL on that team. Like, again, we lack the nuance of where did this kid start when he came into the league, and at a position that is really, it takes 3 years to develop for almost everybody. And he's developed steadily as he went. He's had some really weird moments throughout his career. I think in 2021, he got COVID and then he got hurt and there was just like a dip in production and those things happened. And then this year he lost his brother. Like,
yeah.
Dude, I've lost some friends. Like, I don't even know. I couldn't even imagine then going to play through that. I'm not making excuses for him, but there's just been some weird stuff, but he still produced. And especially when given the opportunity, I was very frustrated. If there's one thing I was most mad at, it is how Dorsey utilized Dawson Knox this year. I want to see more. I tweeted it out. I really do believe he could be your secondary pass catching weapon in this offense, and you would still have one of a top 5 offense. And people were like, he's not that guy. I think he's not a Travis Kelce, but you can't tell me that he can't be up there with Mark Andrews and Dallas Goedert and some of these other guys that are game changing. Darren Waller when playing at his best. Like, he has that athletic ability. He has that big playability, but he was the 4th guy in almost every offensive game plan throughout the season. He's got to be up there more in targets. And you got to do the same for Gabe. Like, those two should share that as a 2B role, that production, in my opinion.
So you're not saying that the Bills shouldn't add to the wide receiver room or to the tight end room or to the running back room, again, whether it's
I think slot's probably the biggest add you need.
Like, you look at these weapons as a whole right now, as things stand, you don't feel like this team lacks weapons, do you?
I don't. Dude, people were putting it out right after they got bounced from the playoffs. They said, look at the weapons from these other teams. And like, sure, I think you can make a case for the Eagles. I think you can make a case for the Bengals, but I don't think it's far off. I really think the Bills are right there on par in terms of weapons. They've got a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, which matters the most of everything. You have a top 5 receiver over the last 5 years. Again, Gabe Davis, the conversation about him is way overreactionary. He is closer to average, on par, which isn't the worst place to be. Again, I think you had the playmakers at running back. You just weren't getting the production out of them. To me, it's more, and this was the conversation we had for years about Brian Daboll. When people wanted to fire Brian Daboll for years, it was execution then. And I think that some of it was, again, this year, we're having a way different conversation if Josh Allen and Gabe Davis connect on the 3 wide open plays that he had. And the Bills are even if they lose that game, are a lot closer in that game. I think a lot of it boils down to execution. I don't think a lot of it boils down to utilization. And we're conflating that to, hey, we need more weapons that are just going to rise all the talent level of everybody else. What good is another weapon if Ken Dorsey isn't getting them dialed up into this offense, right?
Yeah, and listen, having a conversation about Ken Dorsey being here is pointless because he's not going anywhere. So why bother? Do you? Yes. I guess. But I can ask you this: do you feel confident? Do you have confidence in him that going in the year 2, maybe he had to learn a lot of stuff to learn this year. Do you have confidence in him going in the year 2 that he will find a better way to utilize James Cook, to utilize Dawson Knox, to utilize Khalil Shakir, assuming he's going to have a bigger role with this football team, to get Gabe Davis the ball more, to get Stephon Diggs, move him around the field more, maybe line him up in the slot more, stuff like that. I remember Brian Daboll early on. Mm-hmm. In fact, not even early on, going in the early 2021 at times, the Bills were calling for his head. Fans were calling for his head. So I get that. But do you honestly, you look at him, do you have confidence that you're going to see a big jump from Ken Dorsey? Because I think that's as important as a question as who the Bills may add to this offense coming up in this offseason.
I don't have a good answer for that. It's maybe like a 50-50 proposition for me. I'm in the camp that I do believe, and I know my own guys at Cover One put out some terrible looking numbers of the season splits between weeks 1 through 9 and 10 through the playoff loss. I'm still in the camp. I do believe that Ken Dorsey improved and got better as the year went on. I think there's some metrics that support it. I believe the utilization of Dawson Knox got better as the year went on. The running game and the production from the running game got better as the year went on. They hit a really bad stretch of games from the Pats game to the playoff loss, which is going to make those final end of the season numbers look way worse, I think, in terms of the dip in production. I think people are taking the comments made by Stephon Diggs that the offense was harder and the offense was worse in the second half and conflating that to that it was just worse and they didn't get improve or change anything for the better. I don't think that's true. I do think he slowly got better. He still wasn't doing stuff that to me seems pretty obvious of how to use some of your players and get the most out of them, especially in those bigger games as the year went on. So hopefully the thing that I think gives me the most hope, Pat, is I do believe Sean McDermott's not scared to have those conversations. And I think they have the analytics and they have the same information that we all do. I think Joe Brady being in the room matters. I think having an Aaron Cromer who has had success in that room matters. Adding Adam Henry, who has had a ton of coaching success and managing big personalities. I think all this stuff matters. I think they need to actually get Steph, Josh, Gabe, Knox, offensive line guys in a room with the coaches and probably have some really uncomfortable, honest conversations about where this offense needs to go. Because it seems from Steph's row through media row and even Josh on Kyle Brandt, it seems there's like a little bit of tension knowing that they didn't meet the moment, didn't meet the pressure. Fans feel it. I think the team feels it. And I'm hoping them having the leadership council and having player-driven leadership, they can have these conversations and get to where they need to go. I think if everybody can put their egos aside and be like, hey, this is the stuff we need to start doing to get the most out of this offense, I really do think they can unlock it. But I don't know. Right now, I'm a little bit torn because sometimes coaches just double down into their own philosophy and what they think and how things should go. So I don't know where Ken's going to go in this, but there's a lot of smart voices in that room at One Bills Drive, regardless of what people want to say about McDermott and the coaching staff. Like, these are smart football people that are in charge. I do think they're going to have the right conversations.
I think as podcasters or media people and fans, et cetera, we always kind of narrow in on one or two things to blame when something doesn't go right. And in this case, you look at the offense, especially down the stretch in that Cincinnati game. Yeah, Ken Dorsey did a lousy job, but you know what? Josh Allen did a lousy job in not seeing receivers that were open or making some bad throws. Gabe Davis did a lousy job and more drops than we want to see. So there's a lots of blame to go around. It's not just Ken Dorsey. It just seems like, and it's not the Buffalo Bills and their fans. It's every team. I think every fan base narrows in on one or two guys, and they're the punching bag. Till proven otherwise, I think that's going to be Ken Dorsey. Real quick, Bills named a wide receiver coach yesterday, Adam Henry.
Yeah,
I never heard of him. I'm just being honest with you. Worked with 5 NFL teams. I'm looking to step up. 12 years in the NFL. 13 in college. His claim to fame is he's worked with Odell Beckham 3 different times. Once in college, twice in the NFL. I'm sure you and Greg did a little bit of homework on him. Got any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think it's one, we were doing the Twitter Spaces when Chad Hall got allowed to make that lateral move. It was weird, right? Like, I think a lot of people just assumed there was some big problem. It actually comes out like his wife wanted to get back to Florida, and this was probably a good career move in terms of being able to move up. It doesn't seem like the Bills are moving on from Dorsey, and maybe Joe Brady is that next succession in line. And Jacksonville's a fantastic opportunity for a wide receivers coach when you look at that room and you look at Trevor Lawrence and what they're doing. So it all makes sense once the dust settled. But the thing I was left with was like, how much do I care? All right. Like, we've heard good things. We've seen these videos of Cole Beasley giving them a truck and like everybody celebrating him. And he's a good, by all means, seems like a good coach. The room has had pretty decent production. We're unsure of his ability to develop or whatnot. How much do position coaches matter? And I kind of kept coming back to like, there always seems to be good ones that you can replace guys with are all around the football world. And I think this is the case. Like, I don't know a ton about the guy, but he's got a lot of experience. He seems to be someone that people want in their organization. The thing that stood out to me the most, I think everyone took having worked with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham as like, oh, free agent targets, which I get. they are going to want probably guys that he's coached before. And there's obviously a connection with the Bills being possibly in on Odell. So I'm not dismissing that at all. But I went right to how people feel about Steph and Steph getting frustrated with Josh Allen in that moment in the big game and some of the stuff that he said on Media Row, how people took that. I do think Steph is a highly emotional competitor and he wants to win more than anything. I don't think there's a problem, but I do think managing personalities is a real skill for coaches. And that was my first thought, was like, okay, I think some of the rub about Odell is overblown. He is just a super emotional competitor that's been in some really weird, shitty situations. He spoke up about it. Like, that's totally fine with me. Steph's kind of the same way in some of that regard. So to me, it was kind of interesting that, hey, we have a guy that's used to some really large personalities that have been in some tense situations. He probably knows how to handle these personalities. And that's a benefit to me, in my opinion, because I do think there is probably some tension right now in that room.
Quickly, Tremaine Edmonds, polarizing topic for the last couple of years has been, is he worth the contract?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think that's the case anymore. I think almost everyone sees that he is worth keeping around. I really don't think that's a debate anymore. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But, Joe from Queens earlier this week on the show said, and he, in fairness to him, whether he's right or wrong, he's been steadfast for like 3 years now. Invest in the offense. Offense wins, outscore teams. Take your biggest resources and put them into the offense. His philosophy is score 35 points a game and everything will take care of itself. Anyway, you re-sign Tremaine Edmonds. If you do that, and I do ultimately think they're going to, by the way, but if they do, that does probably come at the expense of being able to go out in free agency and sign a top tier guard or tackle or a wide receiver. Now, I don't have a list in front of me. I really don't know who the top guys are, and I really don't care at this moment. I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think re-signing Tremaine Edmonds should be the bigger priority over taking that money and allocating it to a very expensive offensive addition?
Yeah, no, definitely. We talked about it on the show last night. I gave it a 5-star rating of how bad I think you need to bring Tremaine Edmonds back into this lineup. You're losing Jordan Poyer. He's an all-pro in the middle of your defense. I don't think there's a scenario where he comes back.
Me neither.
Maybe his market totally crashes and there's only a good 2-year deal that's really a 1-year deal for him here. I don't see it. I don't see that being the scenario in play. So you're having a big loss. You're going to be without Von Miller for more time than Von Miller is going to tell you. You're going to be without him, and he's going to have to recover from injury. So that's another all-pro player you're losing. Again, Micah Hyde back from injury. Don't know how that's going to play out. I don't want to take another real big hole, substantial loss in this defense. And we know metrics show that this defense is substantially different without him in there. To your point, you made an investment in him early with a first-round pick, and you've worked that investment, and now you have an opportunity to pay him for the growing that investment. I just think it's really, it's good business to invest in a young player that can do so many of the things that he can versatility wise. It's a really important role in this defense. Greg was a little more out on it than me. He's more on the fence of sort of Joe's thinking like, hey, well, it's a lot of money to tie up, but in all this stuff. And my thing is, Greg can whip up a contract that's a 7-year contract that doesn't look so bad here the first year or two, and the cap's only going to go up. This deal will eventually look better, I think, than people are going to be mad. But my point is, the only thing that's frustrating to me is the second he gets paid, all these haters are just going to be a lot louder because his game isn't going to change substantially in how people view him. But I do think it's important. I absolutely am dead set on, you got to get this guy. The only way you don't is if some team like the Giants with a ton of cap just comes out and blows him away with a ton of money, 7% of it or something guaranteed, whatever it is, getting him to just an offer you can't compete with. I don't want to get in a bidding war for him, but I think this is a deal that maybe gets done ahead of free agency, like the day before or something like that, and they just get it done and it looks real big and it goes across the ticker tape as some huge, massive contract. But when we look at it, it'll be structured in a way that they can absorb it. 2
quick points piggybacking off what you said. When it comes to Jordan Poyer, I also think that he's going to go somewhere else. I think pride, and this is not a criticism because I don't blame him. I think pride to an extent, people are saying if he gets, if the market's not great and he gets a lower offer, he might just come back to Buffalo. I don't agree with that. I think if he gets a lower offer, he's going to feel insulted by Buffalo based on what he's given his team and what he's done. I think he would find a contending team, maybe Miami. Or,
Cincinnati might be losing.
Cincinnati, exactly. So I could see him if the money's the same but it's low, not to his
KC might be
liking.
losing Thornhill.
Yeah, so I could see him going to a contender on a lower money deal. Not necessarily. A lot of people think, well, if you don't get a big contract, it's just going to come back to Buffalo. I don't agree with that. I think if Buffalo doesn't come up with a contract that he thinks respectful to him and his play, he's going to go somewhere else regardless. Tremaine, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think it sets the right tone. You're rewarding a guy that you drafted and developed. He's the quarterback of the defense. And the other part is this, which is what we've been talking about. I don't know that the Bills need to add a high-ticket weapon to this offense. I think that it can be with better coaching and just better execution. And I think they have enough weapons, and they got guys. Aaron, these guys that we're talking about, there's no one on this offense, Cook, even Diggs, Davis, Shakir. I'm not going to bother mentioning McKenzie or Crowder, Knox. These other guys, they could also be ascending. You know what I mean? It's not like
for sure.
They haven't peaked. They haven't bottomed out yet. You know what I mean? They haven't gotten as high as they can go. So there's room for them to improve. Well, go ahead.
Well, the important part of this conversation too is that we live in this world where it's we've got to get a guy in free agency. One, I think the free agency class for adding to offense isn't good. I don't think you're getting a top end interior offensive lineman. Like maybe you can buy in on a guy that's ascending. I think there's some in there, Ben Powers, Reisner would be guys, but these aren't locks to come in and be solid interior offensive linemen. The wide receiver is the same. Like Jacoby Myers is headlining this, and I like Jacoby Myers a lot as a player, but I don't think you add Jacoby Myers to the Bills and all of a sudden everybody analyst is like, oh shit, watch out for these guys, right? Like you're not finding that. I do think Tremaine Edmonds this happens a lot in basketball where a guy returns from an injury after a year or two, and there's a huge addition in getting your own guys back. If you lose Tremaine Edmonds, that's a hole. Even if you replace it with a pretty decent linebacker for a year, you're downgrading. Bringing him back on a long-term deal is your big free agent acquisition. It just doesn't feel great because it's not new and there's frustrated fans, but retaining your own guys is good free agency additions as well.
And when it comes to offensive weapons, we're not saying that they shouldn't add and
draft.
The draft, exactly. It could be a high pick. It could be a first round pick. You know what I mean?
I'm also in a position right now where I don't as much care about the future, where I would move some future draft picks if an opportunity came up to add the right weapon where we could get a really cool little extension that works within the framework of our cap. Like there's many ways and opportunities to add talent in the NFL. You just got to be ready to do it. And I think Brandon Beane is a creative GM where I do think at some point here, he will pull the trigger on another, hey, we'll send a future first and a third or something for a real big weapon. There's just ways to do it. It doesn't have to be free agency. It doesn't have to be at the expense of Tremaine Edmonds.
Couldn't agree more. Well, so you're on vacation next week. Maybe starting like 2 weeks from now, we'll start to focus on some of the potential wide receivers in the draft that you think might be good fits for the Bills. Before we get out of here, we got to get to our finish the sentence segment, our weekly segment ending the podcast where I think fans get a opportunity just to know a couple more little fun facts or human interest things about you. Let's just jump right in. There's 3 of them. Something I'm constantly trying to get better at is blank.
For me, it's controlling my anxiety. I get real bad anxiety, battled with it on and off for years, but just keeping myself level and less stressed. That's my constant battle.
It's a good one. Mine is, I judge people too much, man. And I'm constantly trying to work on not judging people who do things like differently than I do, whether it's their social life, how much they go on and they drink now as I get older, and I've kind of slowed and, dialed it back a lot, or music that they like, you know what I mean? Like, really? You like that music? Like people who like current hip hop. I hate current hip hop, and I love rap music. I just hate current hip hop. So, I'm always judging people like, whatever, man, political views, stuff like that might be different than mine. So constantly trying to work on not being judgy. All right, 2 more here. If I had to lose all forms of social media except for one, I would choose to keep blank.
I hate this. It's Twitter. Keep Twitter because I hate myself. I've gone away from Twitter before. It's the worst, but it's also the best, right? Like I hate Facebook. I don't even use or go on my Facebook. Instagram's kind of cool, but it's a little addy, spammy stuff too. And I get the most interaction out of Twitter for what I do for the network. It blows away any social media interaction. Twitter is absolutely the place to be if you're making content for Buffalo Bills. So don't think I can live without it.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I don't give a shit about Snapchat. I have Instagram. I look at my Instagram. I don't think I've posted on Instagram in 3 years. I think I might have had like maybe 3 posts ever. I like Facebook more than you do. It's a good way to stay in touch with family and friends. However, and it's a good way to catch up with old people that you went to school with and stuff. But once you do catch up, it's not as fun anymore. But yeah, for me, it's Twitter 100% too. Between the content, I'm addicted. Forget about the podcast and promoting our stuff. That goes without saying. But it's where I get my news from. 90% of my news that I get is from Twitter. It's not from websites, not from TV anymore.
And the best thing about Twitter is like when news happens or something like crazy happens, like I'll get on and see Pete Davidson trending, and I know it's going to be fantastic memes and stuff like that. Like there's no better place for jokes when stuff's going on than Twitter comes out with just meme after meme, and it's that in itself is worth sticking around.
Agreed 100%. All right, last one here. If you could have one musical act come to Buffalo in 2023 and have the best seats in the house for it, you would choose.
Yeah, this one's going to be real specific, and a lot of people probably don't know. I just introduced you to them, I think, this week. It would be the Foreign Exchange is one of my, it's just like a super personal, absolute favorite of mine and my wife's. I would bring her. It'd be a nice date night. For those that don't know, it's Fonte is the lead singer, and Fonte was a member of Little Brother, the rap band, which is a fantastic rap group in itself. And then Nicolay is a producer, and they just make really good they have an R&B collective that I know you don't love new music all the time, Pat, but in my opinion,
I don't.
In my opinion, I think they have done a really good transition of that like newer sound of neo soul and synthesizers while maintaining like a pretty traditional R&B sound. So it's absolutely something I love, and I would definitely. I don't love doing live shows anymore, Pat. Like I don't go out for that stuff as much as some people that like music, but I would want to support this band. And I think that's the way you support somebody is go see their music live.
I agree. And you have been forcing them down my throat. And I have started liking some of the music. It's got it's
grown, man.
Very vibey. I consider really good music to listen to like when I'm doing something in the background. Real quick here. So we got to get out of here. He was here in Buffalo 6 years ago or so. I would pick Bruno Mars. I was living in Florida at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see him in Buffalo. I was living in Florida at the time, 2017. Just put out a good show. And he reminds me, his music's awesome. And he reminds me of the old.
He'd be a Motown. He'd be a Motown act, right? Like Smokey would love him.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thank you very much for watching, for listening. Make sure you follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. Check out Cover One Buffalo podcast. You guys are doing Wednesdays during the off season. Make sure you check out Aaron's partner, Greg, the Greg Thompson Show, Friday nights, 9 p.m. on the Cover One channel as well. Thanks for doing this, buddy, as always. And also have a fun vacation. Gonna miss you next week.
Thanks, dude. Miss you.
All right, guys. Talk to you later. Have a good weekend.